4 Black people have been found hanging from trees in the last month of June in California, New York, and Texas. Authorities claim these have all been suicides, but the masses are suspicious given the history of racism in the United States, mixed with the racial tensions created by the Black Lives Matter protests. Ida B. Wells has shown us these lynchings are covered up under the excuse of suicides by white supremacists too often. This is not the first time a revolution has led to violence towards the Black community. According to the guide to the Ida B. Wells papers retrieved from the University of Chicago Library, Wells exposed lynching as a cruel practice of Southern whites used in an attempt to intimidate and oppress African Americans who created economic and political competition for whites. In the 1890s, Wells documented lynching in the United States through her book, Southern Horrors. Here, she investigated frequent claims of whites who said lynchings were reserved only for Black criminals. Today, I will be talking about the life of Ida B. Wells and her battle for civil rights, and the importance of her work currently. I would like to go over Ida B. Wells' early life, her career as a journalist and activist, and her legacy. Firstly, I would like to begin by talking about who Ida B. Wells was a little more before her career. Ida B. Wells was the daughter of slaves. Her parents were slaves until the Emancipation Proclamation was passed. She was 6 months old when she was freed. Her parents passed away at the age of 16. At the age of 20, she became a teacher, and she was dismissed as a teacher for her strong beliefs against segregation. Ida continued to go against segregation and built strong feelings towards the need to fight against racism after being dismissed as a teacher. Shortly after, she married her husband, who was also a political activist, who founded the first Black newspaper in Chicago. This all marked the beginning of Wells' career as an activist. Ida was most famous for her investigative activism on lynching. However, she was also well known for protecting the rights of young African American children as well as women of color. In the 1900s, a newspaper published a series of articles supporting the adoption of racial segregation in public schools. She was able to write to this publisher about the failures of segregated schooling thanks to her experience in segregated schools. Wells created a pressure group to defy this movement of legal segregation and push for integrated public schooling. The group she put together is credited with stopping the adoption of officially segregating school systems. Ida B. Wells was also well known for organizing the Women's Era Club, a civic club for African American women who also accepted white women in Chicago. The club discussed the lynching and suffrage of Black women and Black men. It was important for this club to encourage racial uplifting and progressiveness. On October of 1892, Wells published her research on lynching in a pamphlet titled Southern Horrors. Through this pamphlet, she investigated rates of violence in different areas of the United States, gave statistics on lynching cases committed from 1892 to 1895, and added pages of graphic accounts on specific lynchings. Ida B. Wells also examined how white women used the excuse of rape to hide the real reason for Black men being lynched. The Red Record was a pamphlet with large influence in the debate about lynching. Ida B. Wells' strives for the rights of African American lives are still relevant today. Currently, racism is a prevalent topic in the news and all around us. We're currently undergoing a revolution where we are trying to dismantle systemic racism. That is the main purpose of all the protests. Ida B. Wells' activism strategies like clubs, investigative journalism, and uproar are what is needed today. Not only are we fighting for an end to systemic racism, but we are also fighting in the names of George Floyd and other victims of police brutality. However, this has all built up into a fight for racial equality rather than only one or more people. Ida B. Wells believed that Black people must agitate and create disorder in the South to fight against the white men. That is exactly what we are seeing today through riots and violent protests. We are seeing a pattern where whites are always one step ahead and the Black community is constantly left behind, feeling unprotected and unsafe, and they're constantly having to fight for their equality. I have spoken about Ida B. Wells' struggles and triumphs throughout her life and during her career as a journalist and activist. She will always be remembered as one of the most important Black women in civil rights history. Ida B. Wells' fight against racism has made it so that activists can have a leader to look up to during these times of racial inequality. The current unjust climate has been created through unfair socioeconomic situations, various systems of institutional racism and bias. All these protests and riots have been fueled by fair anger and resentment in marginalized communities. I believe that history is only repeating itself, and we are fortunate to have leaders like Ida B. Wells in our history books to take examples from and guide us through these times.